Everybody, to the next episode of Spearatics by Sideline Sports Network. We appreciate everybody that joined us for our first live television show Tuesday night. It's not the original night that we usually run. Our schedule is going to be Monday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. From here on out, there will be some special shows that pop up. Like we'll have a show on Sunday after the game, reaction, recap game, whatever you want to call it. There'll be times that we might win some crazy. We come back 31 points or something, win the game. We'll have a reaction that night, but for the most part, we'll stay on the schedule Mondays and Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. We had the largest crowd that Spearatics by Sideline Sports has ever had on Tuesday night. So I really appreciate everybody for joining and watching and listening. It's going to get even bigger because of the iHeartRadio deal that's so close. I keep saying that, but guys, when y'all start seeing contracts that's got 400 pages in it, to mesh those together is insane. I literally had to get a real lawyer because I'm not smart enough to know what those things are saying. But anyways, all of that's still coming. I couldn't ask for a better first show. I was extremely ecstatic. If people don't know this now, if you missed the show Tuesday, we picked up an official sponsor from Game Day Vodka. They are the official vodka for FSU. They are not a gimmick at all. They want people to know that. And I personally was a vodka snob, and I'm not saying this because they sponsored me, because I went after them. Literally, it's the smoothest vodka that I've ever had. To find out if you've got smooth vodka or not, you have to try it straight. And their vodka is so smooth that I literally questioned if there was alcohol in it the first time that I tried it. And very shortly therefore after, I found out that it was very potent in alcohol. So they do a really good job. They've also came out with their new drink this summer called Spiked. There's 3 different flavors. One of them's fruit punch, one of them's lemon, and the other one's strawberry. They all have their own names. One of them's called Cleat Chaser, which is the lemon one that tastes like Sprite. Go get them and try them. They make, what are those called? I'm not going to knock anybody, but the claw drink, y'all know the word before that. They make those taste absolutely like garbage. I never was a fan of them myself, but these actually have really good vodka in them, so they taste really good. So anybody that's listening, if you are a vodka drinker, or even if you are not, please go give Game Day Vodka a try. You can pick them up at Publix and ABC Wine and Spirits. You can also order offline if you're not in the state of Florida. And they're very, very well priced. You definitely get more than what you're paying for. With that, this is also brought to you by iHeartRadio, an official sponsor. And I want to give a shout out to Made Equal Clothing. Please go check them out, and you can find them on Twitter at Made Equal. I think it's an underscore there, but if you put in Made Equal, you'll find them with no problem. Listen to the guy's story and the reason that he started the company. It's absolutely amazing. So we've got a special guest on with us tonight, which he will be here probably as another co-host moving forward. He's going to be on the Monday and Thursday night show with us as many times as he can make it. And his name is Chip. He started a group that's called Unconquered 850. He has some huge connection. I don't know how he pulls it off, but he has a huge connection with a lot of the former athletes at Florida State. He does a really good job. He's really good friends with a lot of them. He gets them to interact on the page, which is really cool. So if you want to interact with former Noles, his page is the place to be. You can find it on Facebook. You can also find Chip on Twitter, and he'll let you know where you can find him at on all of the social media platforms. I'm just trying to give an introduction the best that I can. He used to play Division II.
The NAI.
NAI. He was a QB. he's got to sit down with Coach Bowden. Coach Bowden told him that he could make it. It was probably like the highlight of his life. I know if Coach Bowden would have told me that, it would have been the highlight of my life. So we want to welcome Chip, everybody. We appreciate y'all coming and listening. And if any of Chip's fans are on here listening and watching, please put it in the comments that you're from Unconquered 850, because what that does for me is we can scale how much bigger his fan base is getting for Unconquered 850. So I would appreciate if you put it in the comments that either put Chip or 850. I'll know what you're talking about. Chip, so Taylor and myself and James Coleman did a show Tuesday, and we talked about Wake Forest and Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
We first started off with why we thought Florida State could win this game. What is it that you think that Florida State has to do in this game to come out with a victory?
Florida State's defense has to make Wake Forest's quarterback, which his name slipped in my mind because Verse, Lovett, and all them need to make him just as uncomfortable as he possibly can. One thing I noticed in the Clemson game is if you let him sit in the pocket, he's going to pick you apart. But if you make him throw on the run or make him throw on the move, he is not accurate, and he's going to make mistakes. And I believe with how athletic our defense is, they are going to make his his day a very long day. And from what we all saw is Wake Forest's defense is pure, pardon my language, shit. It's horrible. So Wake Forest is going to try to stack the box to stop our run game. Jordan Travis is going to eat them alive. They decide to drop in coverage, our run game is going to eat them alive. I really, really expect Florida State to beat Wake Forest by 21. If they play the way they are capable of playing, this isn't a game. This is going to be a slaughter.
I like it.
Wake Forest doesn't have athletes. This isn't the same Seminole team that went to got beat by 21 points. This is a totally different team with a totally different attitude, a totally different swagger to them. And Wake Forest is about to get a rude awakening. You know, I'm usually a realist, being like, hey, this is going to be a tough game. Dude, I saw nothing out of Wake Forest to make me that we can't beat them by 21 or more points.
Taylor, what do you think about the 21 points? Because you're a statistics guy.
The spread went from Florida State being a 2-point home favorite to Florida State being a 7-point home favorite. Dave Clawson has talked about several times, that's the Wake Forest coach, talked about several times how he didn't really want to come and travel to Wake Forest or to Florida State because of no electricity, no food. Well, guess what? We're going to bring all the canned goods to him. We'll make sure that the student section is live and proud, and it's going to be a full capacity there with the student section. We're going to see how the general admission and everything goes there, but I'm a little bit on the side of saying it's going to be about a 1 to 2 possession game, maybe a 7 to 10 swing. Just kind of depends on how everything goes. I think Florida State does a really good job in their pass defense. Pass defense is about 166 yards a game. They're first in the ACC, so that's really important, especially when you're dealing with a quarterback like Sam Hartman, A.T. Perry, Donovan Green. You got those guys that are out there really grinding on the pass offense. Wake Forest's rush offense is not really great, but Florida State does a really good job in containing the run, except for when it's a rushing quarterback. And Sam Hartman is not a scrambling quarterback at all. So you really look at that. You factor in also that Wake Forest's defense has kind of bend and break. They force a little bit of turnovers. I think they have like 11 sacks in 4 games. So it's pretty good for them overall. 6 forced fumbles, 4 interceptions. They're optimistic. They're bend but don't break. But when they get into the red zone, it's kind of miss or take in that regard. Clemson really attacked their defense, and really their back 7. So you're really just trying to find ways to be efficient. And Wake Forest's defense, they don't really have the best rush defense. They've allowed 166 yards per game. So Florida State's right on tack with that rushing offense and rushing defense, and I think that could really be something they exploit. And hopefully, Jordan Travis can kind of keep his momentum going as he goes through the offense.
Well, I went back and watched the Clemson Wake Forest game, and because the game went down to overtime and all of that, I was like, man, Wake Forest is really playing with Clemson today. This is wild. This is great to see. But when I went back and watched the game, it was like Clemson was trying to find any way to give them that game that they possibly could. Wasn't necessarily what Wake Forest was doing good. It's what Clemson wasn't doing right. So the better team came out and won the game at the end. Talent showed up finally, and Clemson won the game. But Clemson manhandled Wake Forest throughout that whole game. Like it wasn't close. The score was a lot closer than the actual game itself. So after seeing it, what it did for me was it made me feel a lot more confident. And if Florida State plays Florida State football, I don't see Wake Forest really having much of a shot in this game. The reason that I say that is because what we've noticed week in and week out, and it all started with Duquesne, we haven't seen Florida State take their foot off the gas once they've started yet. Like, yes, the game against LSU was extremely close, but we pulled it out and won it. Then the game against Louisville, we let them stick around a little bit too long. We couldn't just, put the dagger in because we got cute on the 3-yard line by tossing the ball and causing a fumble or whatever we did. Whatever games that happened in, because it sounds like I'm talking about LSU, but we're allowing people to stick with us in games. But then we go and play Boston College, which everybody keeps telling me that Boston College is garbage, blah, blah, blah. That may be true, but they're still an ACC Power 5 team.
Mm-hmm.
If they played Miami's schedule, they'd have just as many wins as Miami does, is what I'm trying to say. And yes, that was all so I could put Miami's name out there. But I feel like Florida State can control the narrative in this game. I think they can control the time of possession. I also believe that all that this head coach did by talking about this being a Vanderbilt-type crowd, possibly him making his remarks about he didn't want to go to Tallahassee because of food and electricity, I think he pissed a bunch of kids off that play football that are going to be against him on Saturday. So I think they're going to come out playing with a chip on their shoulder even, hey, listen, that's something that you didn't do back in the day. You didn't talk about Florida State if you were going to play them. Well, I think that Florida State's going to make him eat his words. He's going to have plenty of things to eat. It just might not be edible. They're going to throw plenty enough sod up at him when we're kicking their ass up and down the field come Saturday. I really believe that. So I've got them. My first initial thought, I gave a score prediction of 38-20-something. I had them winning by 11 points, Florida State. Now I'm almost on the verge of 17 points just because I think you pissed them off. And that's how much faith I have in this team at this point. And I'm going purely based off of now they got me pissed off. So now I just want to beat them that bad. So if I want to beat them that bad, then obviously the players want to beat them that bad. But Taylor, can you give us any reasons of what we should be worried about with what Wake Forest could do to get behind us and start scoring? What are we have to buckle down on?
It's that mesh concept, the run pass option that they do. You're going to see a lot of opportunities where Florida State's going to get where it could be ineligible receivers downfield. Blockers could be down the field 5 yards, but they do it so well that a lot of these referees for the ACC and Big 12 and other conferences, they don't call it because Wake Forest consistently does this most often. So a lot of times what most teams do in run pass options, they're able to get the ball out of their hands with about 1.5 seconds. Typically Wake Forest is about 3 to 3.5 at that point. They don't have Christian Bill Smith anymore, so they're not having to worry about that rushing attack on that kind of game. But they do have Ellison and also Smith that they run the ball efficiently with. But in terms of that, both of those guys combined last year only had about 120 yards total against us. And those were two backs that they thought they were pretty high on coming into the season. Now, the wide receivers you're going to have to worry about because a lot of times with those quick slant routes, they can be efficient. And Clemson found that out right away as soon as they had 330 yards and 6 touchdowns. The problem is Florida State's going to have to stay disciplined. You're probably going to have a linebacker in the middle of the field, which is probably going to be Tatum Bethune at that point. Kalen DeLoach, who's going to have to be able to stop some of these spy run games and everything. He's going to have to blow up the inside. And like Chip was talking about, you're going to have to get Lovett and also Verse back. If they're able to come back, I think I like Florida State's chances even more in a blowout fashion. I do think that Gaynor is probably going to be the most likely to be ready in this game compared to Verse and Lovett. But I do think there is a chance both of those guys can come back, other than some of the other guys that we got coming back as well. But just overall, I think it's going to really be important for those defensive linemen like Robert Cooper. We haven't heard his name much this season other than the LSU game. And he's going to have to blow up the middle of the interior if some of those guys aren't able to come through. So I think that's really important for Florida State to do. Attack early and often, blow up the plays when you can, and really make Sam Hartman uncomfortable.
So, Chip, how do you feel about, Amari Gaynor coming back, hearing that Fabo may be coming back, and Verse is supposed to be coming back as well? What confidence does that give you with the defense on this particular game?
It gives me the confidence to say that I can easily see this being a 21-point win because, like you said, you make him uncomfortable. He's not good throwing on the move or when he has pressure in his face. You saw that at times in the Clemson game. So, that gives me all the confidence that our defensive backs, can do their job and do their job confidently. Because there is no run game for them to fall on it. I don't like anybody's run game against our defense.
I will add to this because I know Amarian Cooper last week, he came back for the first time after injury, and he really showcased what he was going to be in this defense. And we didn't really see it early on. You saw a lot of times where he was coming in 4 to 5 plays a game and wasn't really being used efficiently. Now he's kind of getting back to where he needs to be in terms of the skill set wise. And now you're not really having to rely on Renato Green being your top corner. Now you have Cooper and Green on the outside, and you got a Greedy Vance, and you're hoping Jerry and Jones can step up in this game as well. But the defensive back's confidence, getting those guys back into the swing of things and getting back to their normal roles, I think is very, very important in this game.
So I had a Clemson fan come at me and say that I really believe that Florida State's defense as a whole was better than Clemson's defense as a whole. One, I do think that we're a better defense all around. I'm not saying by like night and day differences, but I do think we're better. But one spot I can definitely say we're better in is the defensive backs. Our defensive backs room is quite a bit better than what Clemson's is. Clemson's, they seem to be lost multiple times against Wake Forest on those quick slants. They seem to be lost on that post route that not their top wide receiver, but the guy that's right underneath him that's doing pretty well this season. But I seen them giving way too much cushion on those quick slants. I don't know why they were 8 to 10 yards back when they only needed 7 yards. I was very confused what Clemson was doing on those defensive calls. I understood that, and I've noticed coaches doing this, but Clemson was almost playing a red zone breakdown is what I call it. Basically, we'll let you get to the red zone if you can with us giving you this cushion, and then we're going to put the pressure on. Sometimes that can bite you in the butt. Sometimes it doesn't. Well, it bit Clemson in the butt because they allowed them to go up and down the field on them, and then Wake was able to score, so therefore it kept the game going. That's how we got to overtime. But don't both of y'all feel like with the linebacker core that we've got this year in coverage, I mean, look what Lundy's done, how much weight he's lost, how much better he is mobility-wise of coverage because last year he just couldn't cover anybody. Look how much better they are. Then you've got Kalen DeLoach that is absolutely from sideline to sideline. He is everywhere the ball goes. And then you got Tatum Bethune that's your spy guy and run stopper. Mm-hmm. Why would I not think that our second line and third line of defense is better than Clemson's? Would y'all both agree that we have a better, at least secondary than Clemson?
Absolutely.
I'm a little bit nervous about Clemson's defense still because even though their defensive backs played terrible, they were missing a corner, a nickel corner, and a safety. True. So I don't necessarily think that they are a terrible defense. I still think they're a good defense. Don't get me wrong. I still think they have some viable pass rushers that can get to the quarterback efficiently. Their linebacker play is a little bit less with having some returning guys not returning from the team this season. Brent Venables is going to Oklahoma to be the head coach. There's a lot of different factors that go into that. But I will say that with them playing NC State this week and having to, ruffle up NC State per se, it could mean well for Florida State if they're able to get a win against Wake Forest, travel into Raleigh, North Carolina to be able to face off against North Carolina State after they've already played Clemson. It's the same situation we're going into at Wake Forest. They're hobbled, they're disheartening, and there's a lot of different things going on with that Wake Forest program because they're kind of down after that loss. It was a double overtime loss, very tiring, very just a lot of different factors going into it, and only a team can handle so much when you're getting adversity like that. So really, I think Florida State sets up in a good spot. I think their defensive back is improving. I wouldn't necessarily say they're better. I wouldn't even really say they're above average right now. I still think they're an average unit right now, kind of getting into the swing of things. But I do think Florida State is kind of building that confidence as we go throughout the season.
Gotcha. Chip, I don't know how much you pay attention to statistics and how you was a former player, because myself, I pay attention to it about half and half. Taylor is our statistics guy. Like, he is on top of the statistics.
Oh, dude, Taylor nails it every single time. Like, I love listening to him talk because I'm learning something every day. Every time he throws his information out.
Absolutely. Do you feel like Wake Forest, both of you? This is a question for both of you. So however y'all answer in order, I don't care. Do y'all feel like the defense that we're fixing to face Saturday against Wake Forest is as bad, worse, or a little bit better than Boston College's defense we just played?
I compare Wake Forest's defense relatively very close to Boston College's. Actually Boston College, I think, played the run a little bit better than what Wake's going to play it. But as far as secondary, their secondary to me is about the same.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I believe Wake Forest is 13th in total defense in the ACC, which is pretty bad. Let me just put it that way, out of 14 teams. But, they're about on par with Boston College. I think Boston College just kind of gave up on the season compared to how their offensive line's going on the offensive side of the ball. Phil Djokovic is just getting sacked left and right. They're having to get back on the field right after a 3-and-out. It's just been really rough for Boston College. I would say it's comparable to them, but I do think Wake Forest, like I said, has a little bit more bend but don't break style of defense. This Boston College defense can actually be pretty talented, but like I said, they've kind of given up on the season after being 1-3 right now. And you're kind of losing a lot of confidence in that unit that you thought was going to be a strength for Will Hafley's team. Just overall, I think Wake Forest is a better defense, but not by much.
So here's the thing that I'm going to call out who I think is going to be. They're going to have their breakout game as far as defense goes because he's going to have the help from Verse being back. So Verse being back is going to help this. I think that Verse is going to be limited because of him coming back from an injury. I don't think he's going to play like he was when we were playing against LSU by no means. So I think that this is the game that Derek McClendon is going to show out in. I think that he's going to have the best game of his season so far. I think it's going to do a lot for his confidence moving forward. Happy birthday to Derek McClendon, by the way. It's his birthday today. But I think that having that help from Verse, that Derek's going to catch those guys on the winded side when he's ready to go after when he goes in full attack mode. And y'all say that Hartman's not a mobile quarterback. He's not a scrambler. I'm with you 100%. I think he's going to scramble better than that Djokovic, or however you say his name, at Boston College. Not much better, but I think he's got a little bit more mobility than that guy does. But I think that Derek McClendon is going to have a huge game on the defensive end side. I also think that with what we got to see from Greedy Vance and Kevin Knowles this past game against Boston College, that interception that Greedy Vance had was not easy by any means. That was a nice catch. That was a nice INT to put together. If you've ever played the game, that's all the player needs to get them sparked. They get that vote of confidence from making that first play, and then like the rest of the season just goes right. Do y'all feel like on the offensive side, and you can bring up defense as well, but on the offensive side, do you feel like this is a Micah Pittman breakout game finally? Is this the wide receiver that's going to lead it all for us? Because it's like he's due to be the guy in the spotlight because we know what he does blocking 300-pound linemen and stuff to that nature. But I feel like there's a huge mismatch with him on the slot side with who Wake Forest has got in the defense. What are y'all's thoughts?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I brought up this stat earlier on the last show. Portier against Duquesne had 4 receptions for 84 yards. Wilson had 7 receptions for 102 yards against LSU. Against Louisville, Johnny Wilson had 7 catches for 149 yards. And then you turn around and have Boston College having Darian Williamson come out and have that breakout game and have 98 yards. So you're seeing all those different receivers and those guys responding and doing the right thing. And then you kind of look at it and say, okay, well, who's next? Who's next out of this group that we have? Micah Pittman, he's only got 141 yards so far this season, but he's been dishing out those key pivotal blocks. And you're looking at that guy saying, wow, can you be able to be that guy? I know we've seen the screen game. I know we've seen the pivotal blocks downfield, but will he be able to turn on the jets and get past one of these Wake Forest defenders? And I think it could be possible. Will a Deuce Spann that you never even really expected this past season to really even be a contributor? He's got 5 receptions for 46 yards. Can he be that guy? We all know him as being a burner coming out of Illinois, but was he going to take that next step? And you're looking at that just saying, okay, well, how will you be effective in that? So I think those are 2 guys you have to really watch out for. Defensively, you talk about it, defensive ends. I think Dennis Briggs is a guy you need to watch out for on that side of the ball because of him not being able to contribute right away so far. I think he's been a little bit more underwhelming coming off of his injury from last season, but I do think he could be able to be the one to step up. But I do like your pick for Derek McClendon, and maybe it might be a birthday surprise coming up pretty soon for him.
Well, one thing I like the attitude Pittman has brought to our offense. He has, to me, like he is what gets our offense going. Like he's breathed new life into the receiving core. Like the receiving core has an attitude about it now, and it's been a next man up. Like you're seeing the absolute depth of our receiving core. Like, and that for the last couple of years has been kind of a weakness. Like we haven't. Florida State hasn't produced the athletes that we used to have, that we were used to seeing. Now, and I honestly believe Pittman has helped usher in a new attitude. Pittman, he doesn't mind knocking the piss out of a 300-pound defensive lineman. He doesn't mind going over the middle and taking a big hit for a big reception. That guy has been an absolute godsend to us. And it'll either be this Wake Forest game or it could end up being the Clemson game that you see Pittman absolutely break out. As far as defense, I'll look for Deloach to have a big game. I'll look for our interior defensive line to be able to get the push for versus McLendon, and then for our linebackers to absolute just to pick up the trash, as I call it.
So I had a question for y'all. So I know we're all in agreement with Micah Pittman and being potentially that breakout star in this game. We talk about Mike Norvell and how he loves tight ends in his offense. And Cam McDonald has been a guy that's kind of been that safety valve up in the middle of the field. Mm-hmm. Do you think he plays a role in this game in terms of getting, let's just say if you're in a 3rd and 9 situation or 3rd and 10, do you go to him in the middle of the field, or do you just pick the obvious answer and go with Johnny Wilson, the 6'7" receiver?
I would have no problems going to Cam. Cam has actually, the last 2 games, has actually stepped up his game big time and has been that Mr. Reliable for J. Trav.
Me personally, I think the way you get him misdirected to get it to Cam the right way so he does get open is you have J. Trav roll out to the right side and you bring that linebacker down just enough that J. Trav can get the ball over the top of him. I mean, it's a perfect play on a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. So I personally think depends on what the linebacker does. If he bites on it, obviously you go to your tight end and it's a perfect play. But if you're going to throw a jump ball, by all means, throw it to Johnny Wilson.
And I will say, a lot of times with the wide receivers, we never really talk about how Ja'Kai Douglas has still not played this season. He's been one of our more reliable pass catchers. You can ask Miami. Miami knows that very well from last season. I just think there's a lot of different receivers that you haven't seen. Winston Wright Jr., probably the best transfer we've got from the transfer portal, and he hasn't even seen a snap yet. So there's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense, but even though Florida State is top 20 in offense this season, one of their two best playmakers for the offense is still not even there yet. So,
yeah, it's absolutely – it's for us to have this conversation just a year later. You know how wild that is for what we were all saying last year to this year is just – that's a 10-year jump in my opinion. But I'm going to bring this up to both of you to see what you think on this. Wake Forest isn't the team that we feel like is the one that's going to come here, dark horses, and come out with a win. Who is it that we're worried about in this schedule? If we beat Wake Forest like we think, who in this schedule is it that you're worried about and why?
For me, and y'all might disagree or you might agree, it's NC State. We've always seemed to struggle at times against NC State, and I can see NC State kind of sort of being a trap game.
yeah, I'm just a little nervous about that NC State team also. I don't think – and everybody's going to point to last season and how we had so many guys out for the flu and we were still able to be successful in everything that we do. And, we had Mackenzie Milton at quarterback. It wasn't just a great game. I was there, and it was abysmal. But I just think that NC State is going to be probably your biggest threat, and that'll really tell you how much and how long Florida State's going to be. Everybody talks about Clemson being that gold standard, but if you beat NC State on the road, and let's just say you're 6-0, 5-0 going to that game, that's pretty impressive.
Well, everybody, I just added James Coleman. Obviously, he doesn't need an introduction to anybody that watches the show or watches his show. James, we've been talking about why we think we're going to beat Wake Forest. We've been talking about a lot of different players. Your little brother, Kalen DeLoach, comes up almost every conversation. But what we've moved on to, and I want your opinion on it because I didn't ask it in the last show, what team is it that's left on the schedule that you're most worried about us competing with as far as could be the dark horse? Not saying that we can't beat them, just who's the team that you've got the most, okay, that's kind of who I'm worried about the most.
Well, I'll give you three. One, Syracuse. I have no idea why Syracuse is what they are. I mean, no matter how you chop it up. I mean, I saw an interesting graphic about the teams that are 4-0 right now based on strength of schedule, and Syracuse is at 9. So, I mean, and the probability of any other top 25 team with their same schedule doing that is maybe slightly above 50%. So that means they're better than most of the teams that are in the nation, that are some of the best teams. But I'll still say Miami and I'll still say Florida. Miami still has talent. They're just trying to figure it all out with a new staff. And the same thing with Florida. And they're a wounded animal. And sometimes when you go over there and you think you're just going to kick their butt and it's a rivalry game, you let them hang around. But the mindset that I'm taking every week is that we're not there yet. So every game is a new season. And we have to go approach every game like we did with Boston College, because while I believe every game on this schedule is very winnable, I also believe that we've let a lot of teams hang around that should not have hung around. And last week was the first time we just went out and mud stomped somebody from 0-0-0 to 0-0-0. So now if I go to this game against Wake Forest and we do that again, then I'll change my stance. But like right now, just go out there and kick butt and take it as a one-game season, and so that we can continue to change the mindset and mentality of Florida State football.
Chip, if you had any questions, whether it be past tense or about this season, or if it's just Florida State related at all, what would you ask James Coleman right now with the opportunity?
James, if we're able to get a good defensive push against Wake Forest and make Hartman just as uncomfortable as we possibly can, could you foresee it being a 21-point win?
Oh, without a doubt. Something to see. I do my research right here because Chris got me feeling like I got to be like professional and stuff. Can't just do it like my show by the seat of my pants. But one thing that Wake Forest does, and they do average about. I'm trying to pull up these sack totals. I had it. Sack yards. They've given up 11 sacks in the few games they've played. They have, and let's just think about who they've played. They've played Liberty. They've played in Clemson. I don't think Clemson necessarily got a ton of sacks because Hartman was able to get rid of the ball. But it's not like they're playing teams that are explosive and are doing this. So what we have is the opportunity, especially if you get interior push, like you said, and then your edges are as explosive as they are, you have a chance to box them in. And if you're bringing pressure, like an extra blitzer, and what we like to do in this defense, I don't know if anybody's paid attention, how much we bring that nickel guy or that extra safety coming in, like your Jamie Robinsons of the world. Those guys are getting brought, and that's a better athlete than most offensive linemen are used to blocking. That's typically the guy that the running back will pick up, but they're not coming right away. It's a little bit more delayed. So and I don't think they've seen as experienced athletic corners as we've seen. So I don't think those guys are going to just be running wide open. And remember, Clemson jumped out on Wake Forest. Clemson got undisciplined, though. So 10 penalties for 114 yards, if I remember correctly. And that'll lose you, 120 yards. That'll lose you the game. And Clemson should have lost the game. But from a statistical perspective, they were far superior. And what Florida State has to do is show that they have a far superior athlete. I believe they do, even with the transfers. The transfers came from Power 5 programs that are typically better than your Wake Forest. And that's no disrespect to Wake Forest. It's just if you go back and look at some of these kids' offer sheets, and you go look at the kids who go to Wake Forest's offer sheets, it's a little bit different. It's very educational. There's nothing wrong with that. But if this were an SAT battle, I would be terrified. But the fact that we're playing football, I'm cool with that.
Taylor, I got a question for you. You heard James when he came in. You called this at the beginning of the season, and you got ridiculed on Twitter for it. I mean, absolutely everybody and their mom went after you for it.
Yeah.
But you called that the sleeper team that we should be worried about that could almost be a trap game was Syracuse.
Yeah.
So now, you're hearing James say it on this episode. I seen a smirk when he said it. I saw you smirk a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what you saw back? Maybe it's different than what it is. Maybe you saw something different then than it is now. But what was it about the Syracuse team that you saw back then that made you worry that they were the sleeper team that could get us?
So I saw Garrett Schrader running up and down Doak Campbell Stadium every single time. And I knew Florida State had a little bit of a weakness in trying to figure out how to contain a quarterback in that regard too. I really liked Sean Tucker at running back. I thought he was a special talent. But the problem also lies where their next couple of games, they play versus NC State, at Clemson, versus Notre Dame, and then at Pittsburgh, and then they play Florida State. By that time, they'll probably be, I'd say, 5-0 because they play Wagner this week. At that point, they're going to come off of maybe 4 losses in a row. We'll see how Notre Dame plays for the rest of the season. But you're going into that game 5-4. And at that point, you're trying to get a win in your next 3 games. And your next 3 games after that are Florida State, Wake Forest, and Boston College. Can you get, let's just say another win, which in hindsight, I didn't think Boston College was going to be that bad. But I did think that Syracuse is going to basically be a solid 3-4 in that contest before they play Florida State, somewhere around that area. And I thought they were basically going to be, like James talked about, a wounded puppy at that point with Miami and Florida in that regard. So I really didn't know with that regard that Syracuse would be this good, but I did think that they could have a chance to beat Louisville. I thought there was a successful path in that. I thought Cunningham actually turns the ball over a little bit more. I actually had them beating Connecticut and also Virginia, but I had them losing to Purdue. So I had them going 3-1 through this stretch anyway. So it is what it is on that point, but I think Dino Babers is fighting for a job at this point, and it's got to come to a time where Syracuse fans got to look in the mirror and they got to ask themselves, are they really committed to the football program or are they not? And I think they are committed at this point because you're seeing all the excitement that they have so far throughout the season.
James, I got a question for you on this. And then after James, Chip, you chime in with your two. But James, what two players, one defense, one offense, should have a standout game against, or that you want to see have a standout game against Wake Forest?
Derek McClendon, if healthy, or Jared Verse, I say on defense. I mean, I already know what Ford going to do. Ford going to do what he do. But I want to see those guys. I want to see that quarterback harassed. I want to see him panicked. I like to see him on the ground quite a few times. And offensively, I'm gonna go with Micah Pittman. Somebody brought it up to me, and I went back and I looked at the stats, and I went back and watched it. He's just active. Whether it's in, like, he's the second, I believe he's the second on the team in receptions, and he's aggressive in blocking. He just really goes out and does everything. And I would love nothing more to see him be the new leader when it comes to this game and receptions and yards. But I think they're going to have their hands full with Big 6'7" and quite a few other guys. But I would say, I guess, I know what Ford on defense is going to do. I'd like to see Ford on offense do something great. And but I think McClendon or Verse would be the guys that I really need to see a big game of on defense.
Yeah,
Chip?
4 for 4 on Micah Pittman, by the way.
Yeah. All I know is Taylor and James, y'all definitely are going to make me want to step up my statistical game big time, because listening to y'all both spout everything out, I'm just like, man, I got to brush up on my stats.
It's right here, bro. It's on the phone, dog. I'm not really. I can't. I got the CTE is starting to flare. I barely remember my kid's name, so I got to have it right in front of me, dude.
My question is for Taylor. Taylor, seeing you have a 4-game spread, what improvements have you seen in the offense that we didn't see last year, and what makes you confidence in the rest of the stretch of the season?
Plain and simple, Ron Dugans is really coaching very well in terms of that. Receivers are winning one-on-ones at this point. It helps when you have a 6'7" receiver in Johnny Wilson. I think it does continue because Mike Norvell, during his time at Memphis, he was averaging 33.5 points per game at Memphis. And his statistical output right now is tops in the country at this point. You're number 2 in the ACC, or actually number 1 in the ACC in scoring offense. So you're being a successful team in terms of finishing drives. And you talked about it in 2020 and 2021. They weren't able to finish in the red zone until later on in the season. You got to finish those drives. And unfortunately, like Chris talked about before, with the Trayshawn Ward mishandle on the pitch, probably shouldn't have called that play call, but he called it. He's going to live up to it, and he's going to move on. I think with Mike Norvell running the ship now at the offensive side of the ball, I think that's very key. Not saying anything and throwing a jab at Kenny Dillingham, because Kenny Dillingham is, he got a job at Oregon for a reason. He's a very talented play caller. I respect him. Nonetheless, I wish he does very good at Oregon until we play him. But I will say that Mike Norvell does a very, very good job in scheming up everything. He did a good job with Lawrence Toafili with the wheel route against Clemson. He understood that we needed to get some offensive momentum in that game, and he understood that he needed to bring out a secret weapon with that regard. So I think it's really important to understand that Mike Norvell's offense continues to not get in second and longs and third and longs, and they're able to kind of continue that drive. And it also helps in your offensive line has not allowed a sack in 2 of their 4 games.
I'd like to throw this in before anybody else asks. I like how the Bucs starts and stops with Mike Norvell. He owns everything. And one thing he showed this year is he's not scared to put his foot on the throat and end the team right then and there. Now, whether it works or whether it doesn't work, and at least he's showing a kill or be killed mentality. And another thing is our offensive line. Their play this year compared to the last 2 or 3 years has been outstanding. Jordan Travis only having 14 carries so far in 4 games, it showed how well they protected him in the pocket, and B, how well we're running the ball where Jordan's not having to put himself out there.
That's something I want people to watch out for. Jordan Travis has not used his legs. Not that he hasn't had to use his legs. Jordan Travis just has not used his legs in the capacity. Eventually, he is too dynamic of a weapon to not use him in the RPO. It's basically been PO, just pass only when he's throwing it, or it's a run. But the beautiful thing about the RPO is that it gives you 2 running options and multiple passing options, but typically it's cutting down the field. So I'll just use it my high school that I coach at. Very simple offense. This is not Mike Norvell's system, but just so people can have an understanding of how the RPO goes. Our quarterback literally reads in some of the plays the Mike linebacker. If the Mike linebacker steps up, it's a pass. And now he goes to the next level, but it just depends on what they do. If the Mike linebacker stays back or goes into coverage, simple handoff. Now, but you shift to reading the end. So, like, if the end crashes down, it's a pull and run. If the end stays true and stays disciplined, hand that ball off and hope your offensive line does what they need to do. But again, it's the defense has rules. It's impossible for them to always be right, unless you just got a badass mofo over there. If you got one of those, that happens sometimes. But for the most part, when he is able to use his legs, it will definitely negate and make it more exciting and get that crowd roaring and just add another wrinkle to the offense. But why do it when you don't have to?
That's exactly what I was about to bring up. As long as we don't have to use him, I'm great with it. As long as he ain't got to use his legs, I'm good. When he starts using his legs, it just makes me smile because he's such a dynamic player. We're talking about Jordan Travis being a dynamic player. We're talking about how he has not had to use his legs. Here's my question. Let's say we beat Wake Forest, we beat NC State, we beat Clemson. Will everybody finally see Jordan Travis? Let's say he keeps having the games that he's having. He keeps putting on the show that he's showing. Does he ever get brought up in the Heisman Trophy talk? Is it finally going to come to where he's being looked at as an actual Heisman candidate?
I'll say this. I don't think Jordan Travis is going to put up enough statistical outputs for it, just simply by numbers. I don't think he's going to put up enough because you've seen a lot of times in Florida State's games, they're going to get all the way down to the field. Jordan Travis is going to lead them to 300 yards per game, but he may not rush it in, or he may hand it off to his running backs where his numbers per se, like his touchdowns numbers from a season ago. He only had 15 touchdowns from a season ago. He's only got 5 or 6, I believe, from this season. And that's partly because they like to run the ball. They like to establish the run. When they get in the red zone, they like to be able to run the football effectively with their running backs and the 3-headed monster with Trayshawn Ward, Trey Benson, and Lawrence Philly. They don't really want to put him in harm's way if they don't really have to. And I think that's a lot of times it's a scheme by Mike Norvell. And it's also not saying that Jordan Travis can't be a Heisman front runner or a Heisman winner or anything like that, but it's very hard to do. And a lot of times with those Heisman voters, they are looking at statistics and statistically speaking on terms of just pure touchdowns and pure just passing production. He has the passing production, but just the touchdowns per se, I don't think are all the way quite there yet, unless he plays a Wake Forest defense 12 weeks in a row. Then you may be able to talk about it at that point.
Okay. James, question for you. What coach on the staff are you most impressed with this season so far?
My son's favorite coach, Coach Fuller. Coach Fuller has received a ton of ridicule since he's been here, and I'm just one of those contrary people sometimes. When everybody else is blaming somebody, I got to figure out like why. Well, why not this? COVID, everybody blamed the defense, said that they weren't good, but everybody gave the offense a pass by saying they didn't practice. So I'm like, well, did the defense have secret practices during COVID or something that we don't know about? Or is it the entire team is not prepared because they don't know the system? Then last year, then even in some of the situations that Mike Norvell put the guys in, like this, luckily we haven't had to deal with this, but going forward on fourth down on your own 35, I don't give a care what analytics say. I just don't feel – I will never feel comfortable doing that when I know my defense has been on the field forever. When you look at last year, a lot of the times the defense had been on the field for most of the game, and it was just very tiring. And it's tough when you put your defense. Yes, they should stop the other offense every time. That's just not how the world works. This year, with a complementary offense, the defense has been spectacular, and people even then have still been critical. We have enough right now in most of our statistical categories outside of, I believe, rushing. But when you add in the fact that the two of the quarterbacks were the leading rushers, and they're both very dynamic, and Jaden Daniels, who is 3-1 right now, and Malik Cunningham, who I believe is 2-2 now, but two of the most dynamic rushers in the nation, and that's really what did it. You look at their passing defense. You look at them being top, I believe the 23rd ranked defense in the nation currently right now. That is exponential. That's light years ahead of where they were at. That's light years wherever anybody else, considering the fact they just lost the NFL first-round draft pick to the New York Football Giants and Jermaine Johnson that nobody thought we would be able to replace. I think what Coach Fuller has done from top to bottom and not gotten enough credit for it. And then what I saw him on that sideline, the intensity and how the guys responded to him, that is a guy who I want to continue to see on my staff. I think he's the type of guy that's going to not hear what I'm saying. He's the guy who will be an assistant for years, like a Mickey Andrews, like your coach that's at Oklahoma, that was a coordinator for years at Clemson, Venables. And remember, Venables got ran out of it wasn't Oklahoma. Did he get ran out of Oklahoma? No, I forgot where Venables got ran out of, but he got ran out of somewhere before he went to Clemson and then figured out how to stop the spread offense. He was a coordinator for years, and if you go look at Venables' resume before he got the big-time job, it was very similar to Fuller's. Nobody knows where the hell most of those schools are. So I think Fuller right now is getting it. He's getting the right tools. He's getting the right guys in, and I believe he's somebody, because you got to have consistency on your staff eventually to be able to build the program that you want. Well,
my coach of the season so far, he also came from a school that a whole lot of people don't know a lot about, and that's Charlotte. And that's Coach Atkins. One, he's a great offensive. To me, he's one of the great. He will be named one of the greatest, in my opinion, offensive line coaches. But giving him the new responsibility of being a co-offensive coordinator, we cannot say that this offense is not night and day different, even on play calling. I know that Norvell calls probably the majority of the plays. But Atkins has not failed at play calling this year so far. The way that these guys are prepared week in, week out, the way that we're showing up to play the game, Coach Atkins has to get credit for that. So I personally think that Coach Atkins is one of the better ones. Kind of scared about both of these guys being poached next year, personally. I think both of them are going to start hitting the radar for a lot of other schools. Hopefully Florida State can hold on to them. Just like I hope Florida State holds on to some of these players for one more year. Just give us one more year. Taylor, you can, if one of the coaches are saying that's fine, and then Chip, both y'all give me who y'all think so far the coach of the year is so far, as far as out of our staff.
I'll go ahead and say it, Ron Dugans. I think he's kind of said, you know what, I'm going to prove all my doubters wrong, and I'm going to go out there and get my wide receivers a lot of touches, a lot of one-on-one opportunities. I just think it's very important that Ron Dugans was able to do a pivotal job this season, and he's doing it so far.
I'm going to go with the head man, Mike Norvell. Mike Norvell has allowed his coaches to coach. He's allowed Fuller to run the defense, Atkins to run his offensive line, and what a damn good job he has done in building that offensive line. And I mean, and giving us a lights out run game, something that should make a big game James happy, the way they've been running the ball, and just allowing Coach Duggins to coach, his receivers, and giving the receivers an identity where you don't know what receiver is going to be the big game receiver, because we have a depth now there that we haven't had in years. And just the fact that Norvell he doesn't mind putting his foot on the throat and ending the team. Like I said earlier, like he has showed, I'm going to attack. We're not going to let up.
Absolutely. Well, we've got about 5 minutes left in the show. Taylor, we'll start with you. Let everybody know where they can find you, and then Chip, and then James. Get your last thoughts, please, and then I'll end the show with a little bit of advertising that's left.
Of course, you can find me at Norvell Central on Instagram, at Norvell Central on Twitter, or at Central Norvell. Also on the YouTube account, I'm still doing that a little bit here and there, but it's at Norvell Central as well on there. So I'm trying to get all my platforms out there, and if anybody has any questions, you feel free to message me, and I will definitely answer back.
Appreciate it, Taylor. Go Noles.
Go Noles.
You can find me at Unconquered 850 on Facebook, Chip Westerly 9 on Twitter and Instagram, and as far as YouTube, I'm gonna try to get something set up. But for right now, you can catch me on, and right now and the future, you can catch me on Spearatics with y'all boys. And go Noles! Let's get a big win.
Appreciate it. And James, before you start letting everybody know where to find you and all that stuff, James and I are trying to set up, which I pretty much got it in concrete. James and I might have a pretty special interview come tomorrow. James will actually be hosting the interview. I will speak a little bit on what's going on and maybe ask a couple of questions. But James I'm trying to let everybody see this for what it really is. James gets to go to the sidelines at the home games. James has got relationships with Coach Fuller. His son gets to go, see the locker room. We have someone that has relationship with this school after he went and bled, sweat. I don't know if you ever cried on the field or not, James, but if you did, then he put tears on that field as well. So I want to show the type of respect for what he's done myself. So I'm not going to sit here and act like that his connections to this school and what he's done for the school doesn't matter, because it does. It matters a whole lot. I'm hugely appreciative of what he's done before my show ever started, the way that he kept it true with his own shows throughout Florida State's. Like when we were winning, fine. When we started losing, he didn't feed you a line of BS. He was always giving you the truth, no matter what it was. We're all media, so we all get dinged up here and there. No matter how far you go, it's going to happen. But I just want everybody to know that the appreciative level that I have for what James Coleman does for us at Spearatics, it's not second to anybody else. He does a great job on his own things, but he comes in here and gives 100% on mine just as well. So y'all are going to start seeing bigger and bigger things come from James and myself. We're teamed up on so many things now, it's going to be ridiculous. So somewhere down the line, you'll still notice that we're still doing a whole lot together on top of this show. But James, go ahead and let everybody know where to follow you and what you got going.
At Big Game James _36 on Instagram and on Twitter. James Anthony Coleman II on Facebook. I'm barely on that. But if you want to watch Sports Den, you'll see it there at Sports Den, at the Sports Den on Facebook. at sportsden_live on IG and Twitter for the Monday, Wednesday, Friday show. We'll do a Friday show. Then I'm headed over to Tallahassee. Right now, if you've got tickets, I gave away 100 tickets. I got to say to people, I love Madison Social and what they did.